Okay, so when would you use PCIT for a child client with behavior problems, and when would you not use PCIT for a child with behavior problems? So I feel like this question, it's almost easier to answer when would you not use it first, because it seems like it really can work for a lot of kids and like a lot of variety of like behavioral issues. I would say they did say to keep it like for the younger kids between like 2 and 7. And then you can kind of find ways to still use parts of it, but transition out into other things. And then what else? Oh, and then the biggest part, I feel like you wouldn't use it if you don't have buy-in from the parents. I feel like it's really important because it's so involved with the parent and child that if you don't have buy-in, there's chances it couldn't work. And then also if the parent doesn't have the like ability to do it, right? They talked about how if the parent has severe issues or like severe depression or like borderline bipolar, those types of things, that it might not work just because you can't be able to kind of follow all those steps, then also take it home and use what you've been learning. And then the last one, I remember she said it might not work with children who have been through sexual abuse.
Yeah. And I got some of the same answers for that. I did find this therapy pretty interesting. I do work as a child advocate, so just like hearing kind of things like that. I do think it would be very difficult to do it with somebody that has been sexually abused, and especially during or trying to figure out who the perpetrator was and things like that, if it is a family member or things like that. Yeah, I did put it functions for a majority of the cases as long as the parent is willing to do it. And then they have to have the time to do it too, because they did say that it does take at least 6 weeks for it to work.
Right.
So I think if they were going in for a quick fix, it's
not going to work. No. Because I feel like then if they're looking for a quick fix, there's no way they're going to have the buy-in to commit to that amount of time. Yeah. And then for other reasons, when would you use it? I would say pretty much for most of the kids. I was actually surprised. So I used to work at applied behavior analysis clinic. And so we worked with kids on all parts of the autism spectrum. And so it was cool to see that they've even found ways for it to work with the really severely impacted kids with autism. I thought that was really cool. So I feel like as long as you have the parents buy-in and they're able to do it, then I feel and without the child abuse, I feel like it really can work for any child.
Yeah, I definitely think the same thing. It would definitely be cool to see the progress of it too.
Yeah, me too.
So are you done with that one? You go to that one? Okay. So number 2, identify various aspects of PCIT and explain why these previous theories fit in. And they said that he needs to have more than one of the previous theory. So one of the ones that I was thinking that this one would do was my brain just went blank, but so play therapy, which would be kind of behavior therapy, would be one of them. And then the choice theory I thought would be it, because they have to kind of sit there and at least for the parents side of it, has to have to be there to want to help change.
Yeah.
So not necessarily the kid side of it, but the parent side to help change the thing. And then behavior therapy with having the play therapy happen and things like that.
So the ones that I got for that were, I touched a little bit, also with the play therapy, is that non-directive approach that Rogers had. So I feel like at the beginning of the PCIT, it would be a little bit more like Rogers, where it's really that child-led, you're just kind of following along with their lead, kind of getting to know them, watching the parent and the child interact. And then parts of it reminded me a little bit of the family systems therapy when they talk about that first, second order change. I feel the kids having behaviors, we can address that, but there's also that deeper rooted problem where a lot of it ends up being it's the way that the parents are approaching the child. We're I remember one time part in the video, she was a lot of times it'll be the parents will realize, oh wait, my kid's actually not that bad, and it's just the way that they interpret it. So it's kind of finding that root of the problem. It might not just be the kid misbehaving.
I understand that, because it's definitely I think going back to some of the things that Dr. Butler was teaching us with, I think it was Alice, and his example is just like not focusing on a behavior of a certain way to kind of like or readjust it the way you think of it and stuff like that. So I kind of think that would fall into that.
Yeah, and then also reminded me a little bit, I think it was also from family systems therapy. It's that like the feedback loop and how like this therapy, it like finally breaks that loop of just that like negative circle.
Yeah, and I thought it was very interesting that they are very like kind of like a hands-on approach. Like
I
the
really
video
love
where
that.
she was talking about like the one-way mirror that she's just sitting there watching her like the parent interact with these kids, and she's just like, okay, well, I need you to do this, or like maybe you should work this way. I'm like, that'd be such an awkward experience.
It would be so weird. I feel like so judged as a parent at first until I like you like build that connection with the therapist, obviously. But at first it's kind of weird. But then again, it kind of works with the younger kids because I feel like they're not as aware that like someone's watching them. So for the child, it'd be I feel like it wouldn't affect their behavior. Like it'd be more likely to affect the parents' behavior where they'd want to act like better compared to the kids just like I'm going to do what I always do because I don't understand that someone's watching them.
Yeah, and from 2 to 7, like a lot of kids don't care anyway. So
no, they do not at all. I'm like, yeah, I've experienced that.
Okay.
Let's see. Okay.
Anything else with that one?
I don't have anything else for that.
Okay.
All right, so moving on to the ACT. What aspects of ACT are from cognitive psychology? Which ones are from behavioral? And what aspects are from Buddhism? So what I got for this one is I feel like for the cognitive psychology, a lot of what ACT does is it focuses on, it kind of brings thoughts to the forefront. So, which is what the cognitive part's all about. It's how to like addressing the thoughts that you're having. And then from there, it moves over to behavioral. It's how can we, from these like thoughts, it's creating this behavior. How do we change this behavior? Yeah, so it's like figuring out your thoughts, which is the cognitive part, and then you learn to make behavioral changes. That's the behavioral part. And then for Buddhism, I feel like it really it addresses. Let's see, it addresses like the compassion and connection, the mindfulness. So you're like connecting with yourself, you're connecting with your personal values, like letting go of the judgment. Yes, like that connection piece and compassion.
Yeah, I got something pretty similar for that. So I did like more of the cognitive thing is like kind of thinking about changing your behavior. So kind of like in the video, it said like that switch in the back of your mind. Like if you think negative things, like you could start feeling like a lot of anxiety, which builds up on itself and keep going. But if somehow you can like think about it and switch and change your behaviors. So it's like, yeah, this is an anxiety, but I can turn off this switch and not let it build and go for a walk or go hang out with my family and make it seem a lot smaller because it's still there, but it's not as big.
Right.
But I also think like with the Buddhism too, just the more of the values of life and how you kind of address things. So like the video with the car and the kid and how his goal was still to get to Disneyland, but his ride was so much more enjoyable because he was like focusing on the little steps it takes to get there and being like mindful and willing to accept things, even if it's not like the outcome that you want necessarily. And still like, I guess, enjoying the ride.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I like that view on it.
And I just feel like the Buddhism, because I understood when you asked me that question about, was this supposed to be for the other one?
Because it really works for both.
I was like, oh, that is confusing.
Yeah, the ones I looked into it more, I was like, oh, they really do both incorporate the same things. So
the same like mindfulness and things like that. So yeah, I definitely like, I feel like it all kind of like circles into like it intertwines with each other. That you have to think about it for your behaviors to change, but you also have to think like the mindfulness for your behaviors to be different.
Yeah, I really like the way it all just like comes together in one and it kind of intertwined.
What are the benefits and detriments of ACT? So benefits, I feel like it helps people kind of, I guess, more and like once they realize it, enjoy like the little things and not get so worked up on the end goal or focusing on things that kind of might deter you from like enjoying life or like oh, I'm going to work super, super, super hard and not enjoy the little things. And then what if you don't reach that end goal and you miss out on like your family events or birthday parties and things like that? So I think that it helps you kind of focus on a little bit of those like things too.
Yeah.
I do think that not necessarily that there could be a bunch of detriments with this one, but I do think it would be hard to address it with, like, I guess, changing your mindset. Like if you go into therapy, and it's a big step to change your mindset on this kind of stuff, and like,
it is.
Oh, just slow down.
Yeah.
Easier said than done.
Right, exactly. No, I agree with that completely. For me, I put for the detriments, I did a little more research and it did mention that it doesn't focus on as much on like your past. So I feel like someone who has been through a lot of trauma that needs more like trauma focused therapy, or like really digging into like your family or your background might not work as much. And then for the benefits, I could kind of put a lot of the same things as you, just really like focusing on the little steps to get where you're going and to kind of change the way that you're thinking about or like shaping your thoughts. And then that it really focuses on like teaches you to accept, like instead of like hiding away from your feelings, it's like here they are, put them out in front of you, accept them, realize them. It just has like really good approach of just like accepting your
kind of thinking of like that too, like thinking of a detriment, like if you're going and you're like accepting and all these emotions that you're feeling, it might bring up a lot more traumatic things that like you're not really like ready to handle, I guess.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't even think about that. Yeah.
It's just like, oh, you're bringing it forward. This is what's causing you problems. Like, why are you going through it? It's like sometimes it might be a little bit more than people really want to deep dive into at that moment.
I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now let's see, moving over to DBT. And in DBT, why would you want your client to experience sadness with you? So what I got out of this question was that, what was it? It was when, what was her name was talking? I always forget her name. Oh yeah, the Marsha Linehan. She was talking about how, I think it was her that talked about it, was that in the cases for the clients that are doing this therapy, like if they experience sadness on their own, like they will like fall into this deep pit and not be able to get out. And so doing it by themselves could be really detrimental to them, but letting them experience sadness with someone trained in DBT, then they help them get out of that sadness that they wouldn't be able to on their own. So it's important that they are experiencing that sadness with someone trained in DBT, so they can learn those skills to get out of it.
Yeah, I got pretty much similar to the same answer. I did say that it was important to focus on kind of like having the emotion regulation part of it. So like having that trained person and building that relationship, because when one of the first videos they did say like you can't be in a boat with your client and you not be paddling, but your client's supposed to do all the work, or your client can't be drilling holes in the back. It's like you're in this relationship together. So to keep them from falling into that like big deep hole of depression and things like that, I think it's very good to have that like strong relationship, so they can feel it, they can understand what's going on, but they learn how to regulate it in more of a healthy way, that they're not avoiding it all the time.
Right. Yes. With DBT, so I've watched Marsha Linehan in some videos. I don't remember if I think it was for another class in the past, and I really like the way that she speaks, and I actually found a like full video of her talking about it, and just reminding what you said about them like falling into like dark pit, is that like the focus of DBT was to like find the clients that were like the worst clients, like the ones that were like trying to commit suicide, and like the clients that nobody else wanted because their behaviors were so severe. And so I feel like that relationship between the therapist and the client is so important with this therapy.
She was saying that it's like really hard, like when she first started too, that it was very hard for her because she'd go and she'd work on a problem and then she'd come back and be like, that's not my problem anymore. So I feel like, oh my goodness, this is so frustrating.
Yeah, it was so hard.
Which I did.
Oh, what's that?
was like, I did appreciate that she's like, okay, but then I was gonna go try it again. And then like finally we just had to sit down and figure out what's actually going on.
Yeah. Well, that's why I thought it was so like they have like she said like if there's no team, then it's not DBT, and it's like how the therapists need their own like team of therapists to help make sure that they're staying like mentally strong to help their client.
Yeah, which I think is like so important because if you think about dealing with like the most severe cases and stuff, I could see like the burnout rate being so high. Like,
oh yeah,
it's really hard. So I'm really happy like they did mention that there's like a whole team that would have to look at it, or colleagues to like keep each other kind of in check and like help each other out through those hard places. So the next one, what are the benefits and detriments of DBT? So for some of the benefits, I did put the treatment plan, it seems to always be tailored to this client specifically. So they always have help, and like one of the modules were 24 hours of, they can call their therapist in 24 hours, which I think could be very beneficial to the client, kind of detrimental to the therapist.
Yeah, I kind of work.
I couldn't imagine like never being able to put my work at home, but again, you're helping these people through like the toughest situations that they're ever experiencing. So to have somebody to call at all times, I can see how that can be like really beneficial.
Yes.
And then it is more focused on the person seeking the treatment, not just on changing behaviors. So like one of the first videos said, it's not a suicide plan, and it's not because your behaviors are unliked by somebody else. It is to make you feel better, and you do what you need to do to succeed, but also to continue working on what you need to do. And I did like that part a lot.
Me too.
And then for some of the detriments, I said there are multiple parts of this type of therapy, which do include individual and group therapy.
Yeah.
And I can see how some people might not want to put like their worst feelings out in a group context. So I can see how that could be a detriment. It can also be difficult to work through as you're attempting emotional regulation. That it's not really a simple task, but to like try to keep in check things.
Yeah.
For one of the benefits, I don't think I mentioned this, but it says it's supposed to be less time demanding than other treatment plans. So when like it's less time in the week, so they can actually focus on their life at the same time, and still work through the steps.
Yes, mine are very similar. So yeah, so what I did for benefits was that it was a individualized approach to each client, depending on what they needed, but also following this like overall like built structure. And then that it did work for like the really severe cases in a wide scope of people. And that for the clients, it was beneficial that the therapist could be available 24/7 if that's what was needed. And then for the detriments, it's kind of interesting because I feel like it's a lot more time commitment than like just the basic therapies. But then compared to other like severe therapies where they're getting like hospitalized and things like that, it's not as much time. But I did say that like the time commitment for some people could be a detriment. And that it is a very complex approach. There's a lot that they need to do, right? They have the individual session, they have the group skill session. And then, yes, that's what I put for the detriments. I had one more benefit, but I forgot. Oh, never mind. I already said it. So detriments.
Yeah, I definitely did like this type of therapy. I like that it was kind of like intertwining a lot of the different techniques and stuff, but it was still focused on like the person that needs the most help. Right. So I feel like it was like,
oh, sorry, was that?
Oh, go for it.
I was just gonna say that like the first thing they say is like the first goal is just to keep them alive, and I like that their first goal is just to like literally just to keep them alive and make sure that they're in a therapy that will work for them.
And I think that's so important because like I feel like there's a lot of plans like when you talk about suicide and like things like that, is like a lot of plans like, oh, we need to figure out a way to like fix them right now, or it's like, oh, we're going to commit them to see like so they don't harm themselves and stuff like that. But finding something is like, we need to focus on something what will help you be okay? Like, is it taking a shower today, or is it brushing your hair or something like that? It's like little goals, not a bunch of like, oh, we need you so you're not right there right now in like 3 weeks.
Right, exactly. And like one thing, listening to Lenahan's video, she's like, one time I was talking to a potential like client, and she was like, are you going to stop harming yourself? Are you going to stop doing this? Are you going to stop doing that? And like, perfect, you're going to stop those. Then I have a therapy that's going to work for you. But it was like the client has to have that sort of like, I'm going to let you help me, and I'm going to trust you to help me.
Which is a big step.
What are the benefits and detriments of being eclectic as a therapist? So, so what I got from like that is that eclectic therapists kind of pull from like different therapies, and so what I put is that an eclectic therapist, they can have, sometimes there can be, when they're like pulling in from different therapies, there can sometimes be like battles between therapies, and then sometimes it can mean that the therapist is they might be trained on multiple therapies, but that might be not like, what's the word, like lack more in-depth training for like a specific therapy. But I think one like benefit is that when you're like, as an eclectic therapist, if you're kind of catering it to the client, then you're kind of picking like the best parts of each therapy to put some like the best possible plan together for a client.
Yeah, I definitely think it will like be very beneficial to like kind of like the culture chapter that we talked about, is like depending on somebody's culture, like this therapy might be best, like this theory might be the best way for them, but at the same time, like there's parts of this theory that doesn't fit into their culture. So how can we adjust it so we can help them within their culture means?
Right.
Okay. Yeah, I kind of had the same kind of thought too, just with the benefits on that too. It's just like it's easy to be able to pull and tailor kind of like therapies to certain people, kind of help hit that culture aspect as well. So yeah, I do think that is a really good benefit of it, and kind of just like, I guess, staying well versed on a bunch of the different theories and therapies as well.
Yeah. Great. Yeah. I really
I do. Oh, go ahead.
No, you go.
I do think that that could be a detriment almost the same time too, just because pulling from different therapies, I feel like it would be a good way to almost get lost and kind of like mix different therapies up.
Yeah, there could be like some almost like some disorganization within it. Just when you
and I think at least the way my brain functions, I feel like I would just be like skipping or like jumping stuff. I would have to like literally write everything down and make it work.
That's how I'd be. Like, no, wait, I meant a different. I was referring to this one, not that one. Yeah, no, I would be the same way. Yeah, I'd have to definitely be a lot more work to stay organized. But I really like the idea that at the same time, I like the idea of kind of using different therapies and finding what works best for the client. Because sometimes like one specific therapy, there might be pieces of it that are going to work, but there's lots of parts that won't. But hey, this one over here, that would work really well. Let's pull that in.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what they did with like at least the DBT and stuff like that. It seems like a lot of this is just like pulled from different therapies to make it connect.
Too for the PCIT, because you have like so many different approaches for that one too, like starting with the play therapy, and then you're moving into more structure and things like that.
Yeah, so definitely think I can see benefits of it, and I feel like there's more benefits of it than there is.
I agree with that. I agree.
Definitely there.
Do you have anything else to add?
I think I'm good.